Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about a speech to text approach to literacy. You may be seeing these words in the research that some programs are speech to text, others are text to speech. And I want to explain to you what the difference is, and more importantly, does it matter? So we're used to hearing the terminology speech to text, text to speech in terms of software applications that allow students to either speak and have the computer type for them or to read aloud text that's in front of them from some device. And this is actually talking about our approach to teaching children as we teach them how to read. Are we coming from the perspective of what they hear? Or is that our starting point? Or is our starting point these new letters that they see? So first, I want to be clear and acknowledge that we all appreciate that understanding literacy and how children learn, that's an evolving field. And as we grow in our knowledge, that knowledge is growing on the shoulders of prior knowledge. So this discussion is not intended to vilify any other programs. It's just to help educate you and keep you aware of seminal research findings that continually inform how we teach literacy to all kids, but especially to our struggling learners. Now, when I started out in the field of speech pathology, speech and language therapy, everything was from the perspective of the oral language system. So all of my training was speech to text. I actually didn't quite realize there was text to speech approaches out there until I started venturing in to some of the more traditional reading approaches that are in play for dyslexia. And those approaches were doing great work. And many people who are using those approaches are also modifying and continuing their education so that they're keeping up with research. But we want to pay attention to what the research informs us about teaching literacy to all kids, especially struggling learners. And we understand that there are some strong learners out there with very kind of naturally strong language skills in these specific areas that are needed for literacy development. And we realize that kind of like no matter what educators do or don't do in our teaching methods, there are some kids out there that are going to learn to read kind of no matter what. That is not the majority. That is a minority of learners. And so the role of the scientific community, especially the reading science community, is to find out what works best for all learners. The strong ones may fly through this process with ease, but average learners have to do some work to become proficient in their literacy, and weak learners have to work even harder to thrive with the right approach. If you've taken our Vowel chart online class, you've heard me discuss this key difference in approach because many programs really deviate in the way they present vowels. So I'm going to use some examples here to help you understand the difference in these two approaches. So a speech to text approach teaches students to connect the sounds they hear to the letters they see. It's a phoneme to grapheme approach. The text to speech approach teaches students a letter and then tells them what sound or sounds that letter represents. Now, you're thinking to yourself, of course, well, you have to know it both ways. one way to be able to write and another way to be able to read. And that is true. But the speech to text approach, because it really works from this sound to letter perspective, is very heavy in teaching reading through writing, that we're really producing sounds on paper. And then we see those, we learn that sound to letter connection, and then we can understand when we see those letters, they are representing sounds above all, okay? And so let me give you an example, all right? Let's say this sound you have learned, that's E. The E sound can be shown with this vowel team, E-E. Here's a word with this sound. The word is feet. You know that word. What does that mean? And we talk about what it means and how we might use it in a sentence. Can you hear the E sound in the word feet? What letters show that sound? Let's look. Eat. Let's underline those letters to show the E sound in feet. Okay? I'm really coming from the perspective of this is what I hear, and this is how we represent it. A text-to-speech approach may say, here's this word feet. The letters EE make the E sound. When you see this EE together, I want you to say the E sound. Okay, that doesn't seem, and they may underline it as well. That doesn't seem very different. Both link the sound E to the letters E. But as we progress along, the approach matters, and especially as we're beginning to accumulate information. So here's another example using vowel letters. Okay, the speech to text approach. Here are the 5 sounds we call short vowel sounds. Let's sing our vowel song to learn these short vowel sounds. And we practice them. I, ah. Let's feel how our mouth moves as we say these sounds. I, ah. We can feel our mouth changing as we say those sounds. We hear it and we feel it. We're going to use these sounds in some words and practice saying them as we write. So remember this sound, the sound? We're going to write a word that has the sound, and it has 3 sounds, bed. What's the first sound you hear in bed? Okay, that kind of approach is speech to text. What are the sounds we hear? How are we going to write them? Text to speech might be something like this. Here's the letter A. Do you remember this letter can make a lot of sounds? Let's say all the sounds that this letter shows. A, ah. We're going to do some flashcard drills, and every time you see this letter, I want you to tell me all the different sounds it makes. We'll help you with some little cues so you know which sounds go with the letter in our drills. Students with strong phonological processing skills naturally store sounds. We can kind of present it either way, but in their head, they know that as they're developing this sound to letter box, in this new area of the brain called the sound to letter box, they do it with by sound. And so I want you to imagine that we have sound drawers in our head, helping us sort and recall spelling options with relative ease. For example, short I sound drawer would contain the letters I and Y. I hear it, I go to that sound drawer, I know I can spell it mostly with an I, once in a while with a Y. The long I sound drawer contains vowel teams like IE together, IE broken, IGH, the letters, single letters I, single letter Y. I hear I, and I can go to that sound drawer and then pull what my possibilities are when I hear I. The OW sound drawer contains the vowel teams OU and OW. Now, spelling doesn't necessarily travel through history in this manner because the way we pronounce words changes. Spelling tends to stay more stable over time. So kids eventually have to learn how to map these sounds that they hear onto the letters they see. Our Rooted in Language vowel chart mimics and encourages students to store letters by usage, which is sound. Sorting, storing, and retrieving sound to letter connections is efficient, much like the efficiency of storing clothing in drawers. We don't store our clothes by how they look, analogous to the letter, but by usage and function. For example, shirts of any color go in a shirt drawer. Socks of any length or style go in a sock drawer, hopefully linked in pairs, much like vowel teams. Shorts go in one drawer, while pants often go in another, much like short and long vowel sounds. Students with weak phonological processing skills will try to store sounds by what they see. They have a tendency to try to store just by whole words, but they may also try really hard to just think about letters. So there are so many vowel combinations with O's in them. O is a perfect example. The letter O ends up in this really inefficient pile of potential sound connections. There's the short O, written as an O. There's OU, OW have O's in them. OI and OY have O's in them. OE has O's in them. OE broken has O's in them. OO has O's in them. There's all kinds of letters that have these O combinations, and all of them have the letter O. So this is a very inefficient way to store when kids are trying so hard to store by the letters they see. Sorting sounds and spelling patterns by letter instead of by sound is not as efficient in our working memories and long-term memory. It's the equivalent of throwing all our clothes into a big pile in the middle of the floor and then trying to locate a specific shirt or pants or pair of socks. We have to rummage through. It's not as efficient, okay? In all of our teaching at Rooted in Language, we teach from sound to letter, from speech to text. There are times we will do spelling activities that feel like they go in the opposite direction, but we're always asking kids to let their mouths tell their pencils what to write, and we're always teaching them in a way so that they store by sound. We have students engage in activities to promote sorting vowels by sound. We also promote connecting spelling patterns to sounds every time we teach students to say sounds as they write. So again, we're teaching kids to map what they hear onto what they see. And more research is showing that this seems to be the way that we develop what's called word form memory, that we become more fast and fluent, not only in knowing how to spell words, but in recognizing words as we read. So, is this a matter of some new philosophy, or is this science? Okay, well, there's been a lot of research over the last 3 decades, mostly using fMRIs, but lots of other strategies that supports this speech to text instruction. So let's start what we know about the oral language system. We know that children age 0 to 5 years develop oral language, hearing and speaking sounds, which is housed in the left hemisphere of the brain. Now, we also know now that literacy skills are built on this oral language system in the same left hemisphere, and it's repurposing those same language systems. Therefore, the reading brain is intimately connected to sound. Meaning is also connected to sound. The words we hear and say are composed of a series of sounds. When we learn to read, our phonological sound system connects to our semantic word meaning system. Secondly, scientists now believe that our brains store information in what's called this letterbox region. It's an area of the left hemisphere that connects to the phonological system, and it connects the phonological system with this newly developed orthographic system or spelling system. And it creates these fast sound-to-letter connections. In new readers, it looks like initially the phonological system is activated, but as the letterbox develops in the left hemisphere, the sound-to-letter connection becomes so automatic that the two systems start to activate simultaneously. But sound is the gateway to literacy. Third, strong readers and weak readers do not develop the same set of skills. So they've looked at children reading and writing under fMRIs. And what scientists have seen is that children with strong phonological systems organize their learning by sound in the left hemisphere. Children without strong phonologicals, and they use these certain regions of the brain for all of their literacy learning. Children without strong phonological systems don't activate their phonological area of the brain, or they don't use it with the same robustness, and consequently, they don't build the same strong reading brain with the same strong reading connections. Struggling readers and writers often recruit atypical areas of the brain using less effective and more tiresome strategies. That's why reading and writing is so exhausting for the struggling learner. Struggling learners will persist on this path without the aid of explicit, systematic instruction that engages multiple language regions. This is also why phonological processing exercises are a critical aspect of literacy instruction for the struggling learner. Lastly, researchers continue to study our ability to develop fast and automatic word recognition and spelling skills. The area of reading and writing fluency and spelling accuracy is very hot right now, and we're going to be learning more and more, I think, in these next few decades. This sound to letter fast mapping is key to our reading fluency, our efficient comprehension, and accurate spelling. At Rooted in Language, we incorporate this approach into our online classes and instructional materials. If you use other literacy programs, and you plan to take our classes and apply our strategies, be sure you know and understand the subtle but important difference between the speech-to-text approach versus a text-to-speech instruction. Be able to determine if a given teaching strategy will interfere with your child's ability to use sound efficiently and effectively and to store it well. After reviewing some of the research in his literacy blog, Shanahan states the following about the difference in using speech-to-text versus text-to-speech. He says, at some point, any decoding program must focus on print-to-speech, since that is what we do in reading. However, I think there are real benefits to be derived from activities like invented spelling, spelling instruction, word construction from sounds, and so on in any phonics program. Speech-to-print activities appear to increase learning, and that is his summary of the research as he views it in that blog. At Rooted in Language, as we learn more, we try to incorporate the salient information into our work. We're committed to updating you through our videos, our podcasts, and our blogs. We present our materials in PDF format so that we can effectively and consistently revise and republish any changes that need to be made. As one of our followers commented after watching one of our videos, she said, I'm so appreciative that you take the time to teach us and break down your methodology. I'm an RN, and knowing that you are consuming up-to-date evidence-based practices in order to keep your programs dynamic means a lot. I used another program with my now 20-year-old, and I had saved our favorite curricula. I repurchased the program for my younger children, thinking there would be updates in the last 14 years, and there really weren't when I compared old to new texts. That is actually what had me look into the latest ideology on language arts. And she commented on what we were teaching her by viewing our free videos on YouTube. So be sure that you take advantage of all the free materials that we have out there. Also appreciate that all efforts to sort information and update strategies takes a lot of time. So be sure to stay active in our rooted community and follow our ever-growing resources. Our mission is to help all students receive the best literacy instruction so they can become the best readers and writers they can be. Be sure to join us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and follow our website at Rooted in Language. And if you're using our materials, join our Rooted community on Facebook.